Hi, my name is TJ. My dad died of overdose on January 1st, 2011, and my mom is a recovering addict. God helped my mom, and now together we are here to help you. Now let's talk recovery. Here's your host, my mom, Susan Sexton-Wood.
Hi, and welcome to Let's Talk Recovery. I am Susan Sexton-Wood, and I'll be your host for today. Our guest today is Jack Cruse. He is a candidate for mayor for Richmond, Indiana, and we have a co-host, Debbie Lahman. Welcome.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. I think the first question, I'll just ask you to share your testimony.
Yeah, as we were talking earlier, and I explained to you that there's a lot of things that I see in my life that I recovered from. I didn't recover from, mostly it was tobacco. I'd gotten to a point where I valued cigarettes a lot more than anything else, and I think that there are certain things I think in life that guide us. It could be a friend of mine related to his, what he called ragamuffin gospel, that sometimes things bring you to those certain points in your life that you have an epiphany and it kind of changes your life on exactly what it is that you do. And, you know, when I was young, I would run around drinking and, you know, smoking cigarettes and things of that nature. But it was one of those things that wasn't good for my life. And I think it just takes that moment to realize that. I had the first moment was one, and I was glad I was in the military because that helped guide some of that. Yes, I did drink and smoke, but at that time, back in the 80s, it was a lot worse things going on that, you know, that wasn't as much of a problem for everyone else. So I worked hard and I played hard, but at a certain point I ran to where I found that I was out of money at one point, and I thought, you know, a friend of mine said, hey, let's go and let's have a drink and, you know, everything will be all right. And then I woke up the next day and had an epiphany. I was like, no, it's not all right. I just, you know, I'm now $60 more in the hole. So it was one of those things that, that guided me to start paying attention to what I was doing. And as I got promoted in the military, I changed with each level of promotion. I moved myself to that new level, so I could guide others, you know, as a supervisor, not necessarily in religion, but just as a supervisor and at work, I could guide others. But I came to that point again, and I had, as I related earlier, where when I met my wife, it was probably about a week before when I got to another one of those points where I just, you know, things weren't going as good as they probably could have been, you know, and I went to the mall. I didn't have any money, just went window shopping. And it was at that time there was a older man gave me a pamphlet for the saving grace to save myself and to become saved. And I thought to myself, that's, you know, I didn't really think at that moment, but I went back to my room and I actually, it came to me, it dawned on me, and said, maybe that's what I need to change. And, you know, I said the saving grace, I started prayed about it. And the next week I met my wife. So, and from that point forward, and I've told her, I've told my kids, a lot of times I feel that we've been guided. It's not necessarily where we want to be, but might be exactly where God needs me to be for specific things. And in some ways, that's very much what I believe came about with, you know, ending up in Richmond, that there were a lot of things that guided us to this point. So with that being the case, I think, you know, I told my wife, I said, you know, this is where we're going. This is where I think we need to go. And, you know, it turned out that this is kind of where we ended up. And I see a lot of people out there that I understand recovery because I feel from the cigarette standpoint, I can still smell cigarettes, you know, 5 to 10 feet away. And that memory never goes away. And I think that's the hardest thing about addiction and things with addiction and recovery is that feeling that, you know, that kind of memory never goes away. And I think that's what people really have a hard time dealing with, is that they always have that constant reminder that it can always relapse. And that's something, there's not any way we can put it in a number of days or a number of meetings. We have to realize that people come to grips with dealing with their addiction and also coming to religion in their own kind of way.
So you're originally from Richmond?
Yes, I am from Richmond, Indiana. I graduated in 1982, joined the military in 1985, and went to a number of bases. So we traveled all around the world, lived in Europe for the last 17 years before we came back to the States.
So what are some of the reasons that you're running for mayor?
Well, when I got back here, and my radio message pretty much says it, that I came back and I saw that the families are being torn apart by the drug problem. It really is. Richmond, Indiana sits on the preface of a catastrophe. Is that we sit here with Hamilton, Ohio, being right there next to us, and the high traffic way from 70 and US 40. We're just a prime target, and we've had a lot of deaths that have occurred in Richmond. Too many mothers are found to be on opioids when they have the babies, and that makes it hard on the children as well. I actually, me and my wife met a young child. He's a small little boy. He literally could not speak. And my friend said the reason he can't speak is because his mother was on opioids. So he has a learning disability that, he can't do anything about, and therefore sometimes he'll lash out and rage. But those are things that push me to want to run. The houses that are falling apart, we've got way too many people that just are not taking care of their properties, or landlords that are not taking care of their tenants. So it makes a bad mixture. Now it's pushed to where we're losing businesses. In the downtown area, we lost 5 to 6 businesses last year. And now those are the reasons that it pushed me to say that, I think I can make a change.
Mm-hmm.
When you say that you can make a change, what ideas do you have?
Well, I have some ideas, and a lot of my ideas, and I'm glad you asked that, because it's very easy to say that, we're going to change things, but it can't be just one way. We just can't add police officers and expect that the crime rate is going to change. Some ways we have to look at the intrinsic value of people and understand how we can get people to change. Now, there's 2 ways that we look at that. One is legislative. There are things that we can look for as the state of Indiana, and as mayor, I can actually do that, is engage with the legislators to ask why, the distribution of money to Indiana or to Richmond, maybe it needs to be higher than it is, because we're sitting right on the edge of a very serious problem. If other communities aren't sitting on that same, if there's an equal distribution, then maybe that distribution needs to be adjusted to attend to that need. There are things like that, and also there's things that we can look at as far as our policies and how we do things. Dayton has a very interesting method that they've been talking about, and I learned about this through Drug-Free Wayne County, is that they have a help versus handcuff, where basically that reduces their crime rate by not taking the people and taking them to jail, getting them to the help and that things. I don't want to see where we have a policy where we Narcan somebody 3 to 4 times in a day. I think that when somebody gets Narcan, it's a time to, have them take a time out, whatever that can be. And if we can engage with that as the community, I think that would save lives. And the more often we can do that, the more we can give people maybe that moment where they have an epiphany to say, maybe this is something I don't need to do.
Yeah.
But those are some of the ideas that I do have.
And you're trying to, you're out in the community trying to learn what's out there too, right? That's
Absolutely.
One thing. We sat down and you come and talked about Unchained Praises and what we do in the community, but I seen you at a new thing that's out there called the Recovery Church.
Multiple places.
Yeah, and that just started, and you talked about Drug-Free Wayne County. Have you been to Brianna's Hope?
I haven't been to
Monday?
Brianna's Hope, but I do plan to go there. I just find that with communication, it's a two-way street, and the most important component of any communication is listening. So it's important for me to go and listen to the professionals, the people that are dealing with it on a day-to-day basis.
Sure.
Because if I'm not listening, then I'm not going to get, the information. It's just like when I was the other day, somebody described that the methadone program, how long the time period is someone has to be on it, and then also they have a take-home pack that they get after a certain point. And they said some of the people that come to Richmond might not even live in Richmond. So those are some things that we need to address. especially if it's people that are not from Richmond. Maybe they're coming here because they feel that this is a place where they can fill that need and nobody asks any questions. Well, I'm going to ask that question. We need to kind of attend to our people and make sure that, and if it is the fact of taking home the medication, we definitely need with the administration a physician that can speak to that and how we engage with that, as well as speak to Reed Hospital on how much medication is given after people become, or for outpatient care, or after they have a surgery. When I was in Europe, they gave a very low dosage of the Oxycontin medication. It would, basically after major surgery, my wife went through, basically she only got, I think it was like 6 3-milligram tablets. And that was for the first day. And then they told her after that, just take Tylenol. And that is not, I don't think that's the answer, but I think maybe that's part of the complex solution that we're looking for.
Yeah, a lot of people find their way in addiction because of pain pills.
Absolutely.
Yeah. We were talking about earlier today, you wanting to get into businesses. You want to share some of that?
Absolutely. Belden has one of the programs that I've been looking at, and it's called the Pathway to Employment. Because, people that do have problems and they're looking to resolve those problems, a lot of that brings stress on them if they can't get a job. And if you're convicted of a felony due to relation to any of those things, you might not have a job, you might not have access to food stamps. It's those things that make it hard for that person to erase that stigma. And if we keep that stigma on them where they're still feeling as if they're worthless or they're not going to succeed, eventually they start to believe in that stigma. And that's why we need to empower our people, so the people that do come out or they're on the path to recovery, that we give them that opportunity to succeed. And the more we can work with businesses, I mean, that's pretty much where I would like to go. I would like to talk to a lot of businesses to do some of the same things as the Pathway to Employment, or look at their own businesses and if they can hire someone for something other than or something that may not require them to have a drug test or something like that, of that nature, then that's something we should maybe explore.
What are some of your hopes if you are elected for just the environment for Richmond?
Well, my hope is that I'd like to reduce the crime rate and also reduce the opioid rate, because it's very hard to kind of look at a community, engage a community. But I think we can develop milestones based off just what facts are out there right now, like the 40% crime rate. A 40% crime rate, yes, it's very high, and it's went up since 2011. It was about 36% back then, and it's went up to about 40% now. However, we can relook at how we kind of like the help to handcuffs. That may reduce the crime rate if we give help versus handcuffs. And if we can do that, that will make Richmond look a lot different, because people are now understanding that this is not as high, and if that crime rate goes down, then other companies, things like that, will look at Richmond as a positive place to come and work, because they know their investments are going to be protected, and the administration cares about the people. Additionally, when you look at the opioid crisis, we already know, and Drug-Free Wayne County has done a good job at this, at taking account of how many babies are born each year with opioids, taking account of how many deaths we had in the past year. So with that being the case, we can look at those milestones. I don't want to make promises going in of things that I can't achieve, but I think those milestones are achievable, that we can reduce the homelessness, we can reduce the drug rate, we can reduce the crime rate. And it might not reduce 100%, but we can get that percentage of reduction and be able to look at that each year as to, are we successful, and come back and find out if we're not successful, why not. For example, the prosecutor's office had a program where they gave people where they could get off drugs, and it would reduce their sentence, where they wouldn't go to jail. They said they started with 200 people in the program, and about 25 people were successful. But what I want to focus on is why were the 175 people not successful? And if they weren't successful, what is it that we could do as an administration that could
Sure.
make them
Sure.
or increase that number of success stories. And that's what I think we can do with the administration.
I know there's so many stereotypes and stigma out there when it comes to people that struggle with addiction, and I'm one of them. What I think a lot of people are missing is the motivation. If we're not motivated, and if somebody doesn't tell us that they believe in us, why would we change? If we're constantly put down and we're druggies and we'll never amount to anything. That's one of our mottos, is motivation is the key to a strong recovery. And so one thing that I like that you're doing is going out in the community. You're getting in touch with the meetings for addicts, and you're getting out in the community.
Yes, absolutely.
I think that's huge.
And I agree with you. Intrinsic is an important part, but also that extrinsic, what the outside environment is, that can also help with that motivation, just like you were saying. If they feel that someone believes in them, then they'll start to believe in themselves.
Yeah. Debbie, you have anything?
Yeah. Tell me, because obviously the election coming up, which is the first Tuesday in May.
Yes.
I don't have that date.
May 7th.
7th. I thought that was
May
it.
7th.
May 7th. Okay. I was going to say that, but I didn't want to be wrong. This is a primary, so
Yes.
that means that you are running against Mayor
Mayor Snow, yes.
Snow at this point, and
Yes.
the Republican is not opposed.
No, he's not opposed
So
to
that's
this time.
so it's basically you're just going to be, if you're voting, it's going to be relative to the Democrat
Yes.
position
It will determine who the Democratic candidate is.
for the election, the
fall
general
election,
election.
yes.
Okay. So what sets you apart from Mayor Snow?
I think the thing is that I've been preparing myself for this for a long time. I did my career reverse. I started, did my 26 years in the military first, and then I went back to school and got my college education, which I'm a very recent graduate, but I'm a human resource management major, so that's my bachelor's degree is in. And then I was also doing my master's of business administration before I left overseas while I was with the Department of Defense. And that was very critical, actually, for the job that I had, because I did manage basically commander-level resources, and a lot of the programs I did affected up to 30 to 40,000 people, or when I came back to the States, several states. So with that being the case, I think I've built myself over time in that career, in my career to handle these types of positions. And that's ultimately the reason that I did it, was that I looked at, when I was getting out of the military, my wife was telling you earlier how I told her that I was wanting to run for mayor, and I said, I had told a friend of mine, when you're going to retire, they used to tell me, well, when you retire, what are you going to do? I was like, well, I'm thinking politics. We did a lot of my unit, we did a lot of humanitarian missions, and I think that right now, I thought it was just overseas, but I came back to Richmond and I found that there are humanitarian missions here in Richmond.
Okay. All right. So can you be a little more, maybe, I don't want to say precise, but that's good word,
Yeah,
specific in what makes you different from
Yeah. I think
Mayor Snow?
it's just, he has his kind of personality, how he deals with things. But what I can speak to my personal abilities is I've been around the world dealing with people in a lot of different communities. And I think that builds a different tolerance to stressful situations, and also just my education background. It gives me a greater understanding of what economical advantages that we could use as a city to kind of push us along into the future.
Okay, all right. And in our community as well, when I look at the community and I see probably a large older segment, and so you kind of go from here, and then you have some of the, I'm going to say relatively younger, and you've got obviously the strong situation with the drugs. And I'm looking here at the two, and then I'm looking at our community. What do you see for the future for Richmond, Indiana? based on what I'm saying here, because when our kids graduate from high school and those that choose to go to college, we have colleges here, we have Earlham, we have Ivy Tech, IU East, Purdue, we have those colleges here, and yet when they get their educations, 9 times out of 10 they leave.
Yes.
How do they stay in Richmond?
Well, you hit the nail on the head. One, I don't think everybody needs to go to college. I think we need to focus on our technical skills here in the city. And if we can do anything that deals with Ivy Tech and helping more of our students that are here, instead of leaving to go to school, I think the market for Richmond needs to be, why go to school when you could stay here with, in town, learn a trade, get a skill going, and start to move forward in your life. And that way we start building the future of Richmond with our technical skills for tomorrow, because ultimately our infrastructure is going to need that. I met a carpenter. I know some of the electricians when I was a director of infrastructure, that they're in their age that they're getting ready to retire. So if we could subsidize an internship or look at some way that they could be, have those like A-House tools, bring students in to do internships with them. If we could get that focus from a lot more organizations throughout the city or businesses throughout the city where they start those internships early, that way people are coming out of high school with not, I don't know where I'm going. They come out of high school with, I know where I'm going. I'd like to also talk to the school board about getting the mechanics or technical school skills back into the school system. Right now they don't do the machine shops and things like that. When I was coming up, it was required at test, you do half your year was in metal shop, half your year was in wood shop. When you came out, I can build a house if I need to.
There you go.
But that's what, those are the skills I think we need, and that's what's going to take us into the future. We can't replace we can't keep doing what we've done and expect to succeed.
Yeah, that's a definition I'm familiar with. It's called insanity.
Yeah, we have to
And I
start
could-
to
yeah.
change and transform to match our future.
Sure.
Big companies don't come in with 3,000 jobs anymore. They come in with 150 jobs and
Right.
90 robots.
Right.
So-
Correct.
So we've really got to tune ourselves as Richmond into where we start pushing that direction versus waiting for. And it's great that and I won't knock the getting a big company to come in. I would like to focus on American companies, and then also I would also like to, but we still have to keep our day-to-day going. We can't just put all of our effort in that and ignore the small businesses. Our small businesses need to be incentivized. Our downtown needs to be incentivized to get businesses to take up those spaces and kind of make that work.
A lot of businesses have moved because of all the construction.
Yes, unfortunately. Well, that's another thing is that I am a fighter, just inherently with being in the military, and I know that NDOT works with communities, and I would actually fight for the citizens of Richmond to make sure we don't do everything at once. Good aggregation, so everybody understands exactly what we're going to do, when we're going to do it, and how long it's expected to take. And then once that project is finished, then move. Instead of starting one here, all at once, I would try and control the aggregation, to where we don't do that. So, people need to move around the projects.
Now, did you tell me, I think the first time I met you, did you have a position in the city at one point, or did I
Yes.
misunderstand that?
No, I did. I was the director of infrastructure for the city of Richmond.
And that entailed what?
Basically, I was in charge of the airport, the buses, the planning department, the engineering department, the building commissioner, and the inspections, to include the grant writing and a lot of the programs. Some of the programs like the facade, for example. When I was there, I didn't deal with the actual construction piece, but I dealt with Okra and making sure that the city got the money awarded to the city.
Okay.
So
Okay.
that's what I handled
Okay. Good.
quite a bit.
Yeah.
I think one of the biggest things to let those who are watching the show know, you are a believer.
Absolutely.
You're a believer in Jesus Christ.
Yes, I am.
And your home church is rock solid.
Yes, I do go to Rock Solid Ministries more often. Me and my wife really value helping others, and that's when we got to Richmond. That's the one church that we found that, not that other churches don't help, but just the first service we went, it just really, attached us to the community that came in afterwards, and trying to get help where sometimes people get overlooked.
Yeah, they are Rock Solid is well known for helping those who are less fortunate. The homeless, they have almost every day they feed,
Yes.
don't they?
Yeah,
Feed
well,
the
they've got
homeless.
the Sunday service is when they do the feeding, that they have the meal service then. It's not every day, and then they've got a clinic actually also there as well on Tuesday nights. So that's something that also benefits our community.
Right, for the medical is free of charge for
Yeah,
them
a
to
lot
come
of things
in.
that free of charge are vouchers that can help people get some medications and things like that.
And did you not say that and it might be you and your wife, that you do some volunteering in that as well through your church and some of the,
Yes.
not necessarily in the medical part, but in servicing there in your church?
Yes, we do. We've always done that, and when we were overseas, we did a lot of different projects with that. But we had the non-denominational service on the base. So, because my wife was born Catholic or raised Catholic, and I was raised Baptist, so we always look for the non-denominational church.
Yeah, there's a little difference there. That's good. What, I guess if you could, talk to our audience and, just tell us maybe, what your vision or what you can do for Richmond. I know you've talked about that, but just sort of, just look at our audience and just
Absolutely.
say what's on your heart.
Well, I'd just say that I plan to be, and I think the position exists for the purpose of being a public servant. I mean, no matter what, you can say Democrat, Republican, it doesn't matter. If you take that position on, you're serving the public. And I believe that in being the mayor, then whether I like people, don't like them, I'm there to represent everyone. And I'd like everybody to know that basically my plan is basically through teamwork to develop a family-oriented, inclusive community working together for tomorrow. And that's my vision statement, and that's what I think we can do. And I think I've done a lot of, or I know I've already organized several bases in the same way. We call it a strategic alignment and development, making sure everybody knows what the vision statement is and where they fit in that vision statement and working together. To include with addiction, I think there's some integrated processes that the administration could facilitate to help people understand, what the right hand and the left hand are doing, so we can work together to build the total community.
Well, we thank you for being on the show today, and
Thank you, Susan.
it's exciting to hear what's going on with you, even bigger, like I said, you out in the community, I think is a real need.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
If you are someone struggling with addiction, we encourage you to reach out for help. You don't have to live in that life anymore. From a once struggling addict, I know that life can change. I know that we can become someone different. We can be a productive member of society, and we don't have to listen to the stereotypes, and we don't have to live in yesterday. We can move forward in today. And so we just encourage you to get a hold of us. You can get a hold of us on the number on the screen or Facebook. And we thank you for joining us on the Let's Talk Recovery show, and you have a blessed night.